If you're a lifelong horror fan like me, then chances are you grew up with the Universal monster classics. Movies that defined the genre for decades and are still inspiring movies today. I've seen pretty much all these movies many times over, so I thought what better way to celebrate the Halloween season by going through and ranking all 30 of the Universal monster classics from worst to best. So starting at number 30, we have She-Wolf of London. This one is more of a soap opera than a monster movie. It very much teases a werewolf tale, but ultimately delivers more of a gaslighting melodrama, and doesn't really have any connection to Werewolf of London, the 1935 film. Ultimately, the film doesn't really amount to much, and in a way I would say it shouldn't really even be considered part of the cycle, but it is because of the title. And then at number 29, we have Phantom of the Opera. This is not the silent Lon Chaney classic, instead this version swaps horror for glossy technicolor drama. It's very pretty to look at, but not exactly spine-chilling. I'll admit that I'm not really a fan of any particular version of Phantom of the Opera, but even with that said, I've always been confused as to why this is even considered to be part of the Universal Monsters legacy. I mean, the original 1925 film isn't, so why this one? And the fact that it's in color also doesn't really make it fit either, considering all the other movies are in black and white. It's not a terrible made movie, but I'm just not particularly a fan, and honestly I don't think it should even really be considered to be part of the cycle at all. And then at number 28, we have The Invisible Woman, a comedy that takes the Invisible Man formula and dials it down to a screwball farce. It's fun in its own way for the time in which it was made, but if you're looking for any of the similar horror and suspense in the other Invisible Man movies, then you'll be disappointed. It's not particularly bad, but not all that good either. And then at number 27, we have The Mummy's Curse. By this point, the Mummy movies were beginning to run out of steam, with the mummy Karras basically limping his way through swamps. It's entertaining for what it is, but it's also clear why this was the last regular Mummy movie for the original run. And then at number 26, we have The Mummy's Ghost, the second to last entry that also has more swamp trudging, but at least this one introduces the idea of internal love and reincarnation. Still, it's not much to scream about, but it is fun for what it is. And then at number 25, we have The Invisible Man's Revenge. Our invisible fiend is back, and this time he's more of a jerk than ever. The fun effects are still there, but the novelty of the concept was starting to wear off. Very much like the last Mummy movie, it's easy and clear to understand why this was the last regular Invisible Man film, but it is still enjoyable, but definitely the weakest entry of all the other Invisible Man films. And then at number 24, we have Son of Dracula. Lon Chaney Jr. dons the cape in this entry, which means that at least one point or another he played the Wolfman, the Mummy, Frankenstein, and Dracula. It's pretty cool that he got to play so many of the different monsters, but he wasn't really the most convincing or best fit for Dracula. But there is still enough cool, swampy, gothic atmosphere in this one to still make it enjoyable. And then at number 23, we have The Mummy's Tomb, the second Karras entry of the Mummy series, and is also the first entry with Lon Chaney Jr. It has a lot of recycled footage from The Mummy's Hand, but it also has enough of its own additions to make it a worthy entry, and the fiery ending makes it a fun one. And then at number 22, we have Werewolf of London. The first werewolf film that Universal made is also an interesting prototype for a much better film to come later on. It lacks much of the mythic punch of the Wolfman, but it's still a good time. And then at number 21, we have The Ghost of Frankenstein. The fourth Frankenstein film with Lon Chaney Jr. stepping in as the monster is a solid entry, but also a very formulaic one. It doesn't quite reach the heights of the other entries, making it the least memorable of the Frankenstein cycle. And then at number 20, we have The Mummy's Hand. Basically a soft reboot that introduces Karras, the bandaged mummy we'd see lumber around for years to come. Cheap fun with some pulp flair, and you really see in this entry in particular how it would influence the more action-adventure tone of the later Mummy films with Brendan Fraser. And then at number 19, we have The Creature Walks Among Us. The final entry in the entire Universal Monsters cycle is not the worst, but also far from being the best. The creature gets a makeover, literally becoming more human, with the film being more sad than scary, but it is still an interesting evolution of the Gill-Man, and is not the worst film for the entire cycle to go out on. And then at number 18, we have House of Dracula. The third of the so-called Monster Mash movies continues with Dracula, Frankenstein, and the Wolfman, once again all crammed into one movie. It's fun chaos, but it's definitely the least exciting of the crossover movies they made, ending with some very clunky stock footage from Ghost of Frankenstein. And then at number 17, we have Revenge of the Creature. The Gill-Man gets his first sequel with Clint Eastwood making his big screen debut. It's not on the same level as the original film, but it still delivers on some great 50s monster thrills, with lots of great underwater sequences, making it a fun one. And then at number 16, we have the original The Mummy. Boris Karloff's iconic turn on Imhotep gives us lots of great atmosphere to spare, even if the movie itself feels much slower and moodier compared to many of the other Universal Monster movies. And then at number 15, we have The Invisible Agent. It's propaganda of the time for sure, but also a surprisingly inventive World War II era entry that actually works pretty well as a nice little change up from the other films in the series. And then at number 14, we have The Invisible Man Returns. Vincent Price takes over as the Invisible Menace in this entry, which already makes it far more enjoyable than some of the other films, giving this sequel some great flair, but it's not as groundbreaking as the original, but it is still a lot of fun. And then at number 13, we have Dracula's Daughter. An underrated gothic gem for sure, with a lot of great eerie atmosphere. It's one that doesn't really get talked about enough because it's actually a pretty well made follow-up to the original Dracula that I think is worth revisiting. And then at number 12, we have Abbott and Costello Meet the Mummy. By now, Abbott and Costello were Universal's go-to Monster Mash guys. It's not their best outing, but it is still a fun, goofy way to close out the Mummy saga, as well as being the last Abbott and Costello crossover for the monsters as a whole. And then at number 11, we have the original Frankenstein, the film that launched Boris Karloff into a horror movie legend. It's gothic, chilling, and deeply tragic. Though it doesn't quite hit the emotional heights of its sequel, it is still a very entertaining and classic movie. And then at number 10, we have the original Dracula. Bela Lugosi's cape, accent, and stare became the template for Dracula for, well, forever. It's iconic, but it's also creaky compared to other entries, but its own special charm is more than enough to still make it a really great and entertaining movie. And then at number 9, we have Abbott and Costello Meet the Invisible Man, a surprisingly funny blend of monster mayhem and slapstick boxing comedy. A late series highlight for the duo that probably is one of their best movies that they ever made. It might not be as in tune with the other Invisible Man movies, but it's so enjoyable that I had to put it up high up on the list. And then at number 8, we have Son of Frankenstein, Karloff's last time in the makeup, plus Basil Rathbone as Dr. Frankenstein, and Bela Lugosi stealing scenes as Igor, and is a rich continuation of the mythos, which makes this one of the best entries in the entire cycle. And then at number 7, we have House of Frankenstein. The second of the Monster Mash movies is chaotic, but the novelty of getting to see Dracula, the Wolfman, and Frankenstein's monster all in one movie is undeniable, making this one of my most watched entries in the entire saga. And then at number 6, we have Creature from the Black Lagoon, one of Universal's last great monster movies, and a wonderful underwater spectacle that still holds up well. The Gillman is tragic, terrifying, and strangely sympathetic, making this an all-time great monster classic. And then at number 5, we have Frankenstein meets the Wolfman, the crossover event of the 1940s with Lugosi as Frankenstein's monster and Lon Chaney Jr. returning as the Wolfman. It's pure monster fun that made history as the first major crossover in cinema, whilst also being a really solid follow-up to The Wolfman and also starting the whole Monster Mash trilogy. And then at number 4, we have Bride of Frankenstein. James Whale's dark masterpiece is witty, grotesque, and iconic. Karloff and Elsa Lancaster's turn in this one is pure gothic poetry that goes beyond the more simple and B-movie quality of most of the other films in the cycle, making it an iconic film. And then at number 3, we have The Invisible Man. Claude Rains cackles his way through some of the best early special effects ever in film history, most of which still look great today. It's darkly funny and genuinely unsettling at times, making this 80-year-old classic still work incredibly well. And then at number 2, we have Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein, a shockingly great romp with the comedy duo at their peak. Lugosi and Chaney give their all in this both hilarious and proper monster swan song for many of the characters, a film that is endlessly rewatchable, making it a top highlight for the saga. And then at number 1, we have The Wolfman. Lon Chaney Jr.'s tragic Larry Talbot makes Universal's most emotional monster movie. Foggy forests, gothic curses, and the best werewolf mythos ever put to screen. It's a perfect balance of horror and humanity, and an all-time classic film that is also the one that got me into horror movies to begin with, so that basically de facto makes it number 1. Well guys, there you go. That is the way that I would rank all 30 of the Universal Monster Classic movies. Feel free to jump in the comments down below and let me know how you would rank all the Universal Monster Classics. So until next time, be sure to consume as much entertainment as humanly possible, and I'll see you in the next video.